I was still holding the ice pack against my swollen cheek when my mother opened the front door and pointed outside. "Get out, Sophia. I don't want you here anymore." My stepbrother Tyler stood behind her in the hallway, arms crossed, with a small cut above his eyebrow from where I had tried to fight back. He was smiling. I looked at my mother, confused and in pain. "Mom, he hit me first. He threw me against the wall. You saw it." She didn't even flinch. "I saw you provoking him again," she said coldly. "You've always been difficult. Tyler is part of this family now. If you can't get along with him, then you don't belong here." I felt like the ground had disappeared beneath me. Welcome back to Polite Revenge Stories, quiet stories about ordinary people who stop apologizing for taking up space. If you've ever been thrown out of your own home by your mother after your stepbrother hurt you, this one's for you. Drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from. I read every single one. My name is Sophia Langford, and this is the story of how my mother kicked me out of the house after my stepbrother beat me, and how my grandmother's will eventually made me the owner of everything they tried to keep from me. I was 17 when it happened. My father had died 4 years earlier, and my mother remarried a man named Richard Reed. Tyler was his son from a previous marriage. He was 2 years older than me and had a mean streak that everyone in the house pretended not to see. At first, I tried to stay out of his way, but Tyler enjoyed pushing buttons. He would take my things, spread lies about me to my mother, and when I pushed back, he would get physical. That night was the worst. We got into an argument because he had gone into my room and broken my laptop. When I confronted him, he grabbed me by the arm, shoved me hard against the wall, and then slapped me across the face when I tried to push him back. My mother walked in right as I was trying to hit him back. Instead of helping me, she chose him. "Get out," she repeated, her voice flat. "I'm done dealing with your drama. You're almost 18 anyway. Go stay with a friend or something." I stood there in the doorway, holding my cheek, looking at the woman who was supposed to protect me. She didn't even look sorry. I had nowhere to go. My grandmother, Margaret, had passed away 2 years earlier. She was the only person in the family who had ever truly stood up for me. After she died, my mother sold most of her things and acted like she never existed. I didn't have grandparents on my father's side. I didn't have close aunts or uncles I could call. So I did the only thing I could think of. I grabbed the backpack, stuffed some clothes inside, and walked out into the night. I stayed with a classmate for a few weeks. Then I moved into a cheap room in someone's basement. I finished high school while working part-time at a diner. I didn't go to college because I couldn't afford it. I just survived. For years, I tried to forget that house and everyone in it. I moved to Raleigh, North Carolina, changed my number, and started over. I worked my way up from retail jobs to becoming an assistant manager at a logistics company. I built a small, quiet life for myself. I hadn't spoken to my mother or Tyler in almost 7 years.
Then, one random Tuesday afternoon, everything changed. I was at work when I received an email from a law firm I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "Regarding the estate of Margaret Ellison." I almost deleted it, thinking it was spam, but something made me open it. The email was from a lawyer named Mr. Daniel Brooks. He wrote that he had been trying to locate me for several months. According to him, my grandmother had left behind a will that had never been fully executed. He said there were important documents I needed to see and asked if I could come to his office in Charlotte. I stared at the screen for a long time. My grandmother had died years ago. My mother had handled everything. As far as I knew, there was nothing left. Still, I replied. 2 days later, I drove to Charlotte and sat in a small, old-fashioned law office across from Mr. Brooks. He was an older man with kind eyes and a thick folder in front of him. "Sophia," he said gently, "your grandmother came to me 3 months before she passed. She was worried about you. She told me that your mother had remarried and that things at home were difficult. He opened the folder and slid a document toward me. This is her will. She left you the house in Charlotte, the one your mother is currently living in. I blinked. What? Mr. Brooks nodded. She changed the will quietly. She didn't want your mother to know until it was too late to contest it. The house, the land it sits on, and a small savings account were all left to you. Your mother was only given permission to live there until you turned 25, or until you claimed it. I felt like I couldn't breathe. She knew, I whispered. She knew what was happening to me. Mr. Brooks looked at me with sympathy. She suspected, and she wanted to make sure you would always have somewhere safe to return to. He paused, then added something that made my blood run cold. There's one more thing. Your grandmother added a clause. If your mother or stepbrother ever tried to sell the house or remove you from it permanently, the ownership would transfer to you immediately. I sat there in silence, staring at the papers. For 7 years, I had believed I had nothing. No home, no family, no safety. I had worked dead-end jobs, lived in small rooms, and told myself that I was better off alone. And the whole time, this house, the same house my mother kicked me out of, had legally belonged to me. Mr. Brooks looked at me carefully. So, Sophia, he asked, what would you like to do? I didn't answer right away, but for the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't felt since the night my mother kicked me out. Power. I left Mr. Brooks's office in a daze. The folder he gave me felt heavy in my hands, even though it wasn't thick. Inside were the will, property deeds, and a few old letters my grandmother had written. I sat in my car for almost 20 minutes before I could even start the engine. For 7 years, I had believed I had nothing. No home, no family, no safety. I had worked dead-end jobs, lived in small rooms, and told myself that I was better off alone. And the whole time, this house, the same house my mother kicked me out of, had legally belonged to me. I felt angry, but more than that, I felt betrayed. My grandmother had tried to protect me, and my mother had kept it from me. She had let me struggle, let me believe I had nowhere to go, while she continued living comfortably in a house that wasn't even hers anymore. I drove back to Raleigh that evening without calling anyone. I didn't sleep much that night. I kept thinking about the night my mother told me to leave, about Tyler's smirk, about how easily she chose him over me. By morning, I had made a decision. I wasn't going to quietly take the house and let them move out peacefully. They needed to understand what they had done. 2 days later, I drove back to Charlotte. I didn't call ahead. I wanted to see the look on my mother's face when she realized why I was there. The house looked almost the same as I remembered, just a little older. The paint on the porch was peeling in some places. My mother's car was parked in the driveway. Tyler's truck was there too. I sat in my car for a minute, staring at the front door. Then I got out and walked up to the house. I knocked twice. After a few seconds, the door opened. My mother stood there in a faded blue sweater, holding a mug of coffee. For a moment, she just stared at me like she was seeing a ghost. "Sophia?" she said, confused. "What are you doing here?" I didn't answer right away. I just looked at her. "Can I come in?" I asked calmly. She hesitated, then stepped aside. Tyler was sitting on the couch in the living room, scrolling on his phone. When he saw me, he sat up straighter, a smirk already forming on his face. "Well, well," he said. "Look who decided to come crawling back." I ignored him and turned to my mother. "I need to talk to you. Alone." My mother glanced at Tyler, then back at me. "Whatever you have to say, you can say it in front of him. He's family." I almost laughed. "Fine," I said. I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder Mr. Brooks had given me.
I placed it on the coffee table. My mother looked at it, but didn't touch it. "What is this?" she asked. "It's Grandma's will. The real one." Tyler snorted. "We already dealt with all that years ago. Mom handled everything." I looked directly at my mother. "No, she didn't. Grandma changed the will 3 months before she died. She left the house to me. Not to you. Not to be split. To me." My mother's face went pale. "You're lying," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. I opened the folder and slid the first page toward her. "Read it." She picked it up with shaking hands. As her eyes moved across the page, I watched her expression change. The color drained from her face. Tyler leaned over to look. "What the hell is this?" he muttered. My mother looked up at me, her eyes wide. This can't be real. I handled everything after she died. The lawyer never said anything about this." "Because Grandma used a different lawyer," I said. "One you didn't know about. She was worried about what would happen to me after she was gone. Turns out she had a reason to be worried." Tyler stood up. "This is bullshit," he said. "You can't just show up after 7 years and claim the house. We've been living here. We've been paying the bills." I turned to him. "Actually, you haven't been paying the mortgage. Grandma paid it off before she died. The only thing you've been paying is property tax, and even that was coming from the small account she left in my name." My mother sank down onto the couch like her legs couldn't hold her anymore. "Sophia," she said, her voice small, "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know about this will." "Maybe you didn't," I said, "but you knew what Tyler did to me. And you still threw me out of this house like I was nothing. You let me struggle for years while you lived here comfortably." She looked down at her hands. "I was trying to keep the peace," she whispered. "No," I said. "You were choosing him again and again, and now it's time for you to deal with the consequences." Tyler took a step toward me. "You think you can just kick us out after everything?" I looked at him without flinching. "I'm not kicking you out today," I said, "but this house is legally mine, and I've already spoken to a lawyer. You have 30 days to find somewhere else to live." My mother's head snapped up. "30 days?" she repeated. "Sophia, that's not enough time. Where are we supposed to go?" I stared at her. "You had 7 years to figure that out. I had 1 night." The room went silent. Tyler's face had turned red with anger. "You're doing this for revenge," he spat. "You waited all this time just to screw us over." I shook my head. "No," I said quietly. "I didn't even know about the will until 2 days ago. But now that I do, I'm not going to pretend it doesn't exist just to make your life easier." My mother was crying now, silent tears running down her face. "Sophia, please," she said. "We can work something out. You don't have to do this." I looked at her for a long moment. Then I picked up the folder from the table. "I'm not doing anything," I said. "I'm just taking back what was always mine, the same way you took everything from me 7 years ago." I turned and walked toward the door. Before I left, I looked back one last time. "You have 30 days. After that, I'll be changing the locks." Then I walked out of the house and closed the door behind me. As I got into my car, my hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the weight of what I had just done. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one being thrown out. I was the one doing the throwing. And even though a small part of me felt guilty, a much bigger part of me felt something I hadn't felt in years. Free. I drove back to Raleigh that evening with my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. The confrontation had gone exactly how I expected, and nothing like I had imagined. My mother had cried, Tyler had gotten angry, but neither of them had apologized, not once. Not for kicking me out that night, not for letting Tyler hurt me, not for the 7 years I had spent struggling alone. Instead, they acted like I was the one being cruel. I reached my apartment around 9 p.m. and sat on the couch in the dark for a long time. I didn't turn on the lights. I just stared at the wall, replaying the conversation in my head. A part of me had hoped, even after everything, that my mother would finally admit she was wrong, that she would say she was sorry for choosing Tyler over me. But she didn't. She only cared about losing the house. Around 10:30, my phone started ringing. It was my mother. I let it go to voicemail. She called again 5 minutes later, then again. By the fourth call, I turned my phone off completely. The next morning, I had 3 missed calls from her and one from an unknown number. There was also a text from my mother. Mom, Sophia, please call me. We need to talk about this like adults. You're being unreasonable. I didn't reply. Instead, I called Mr. Brooks, the lawyer who had given me the will. I told him everything that had happened during the confrontation. He listened quietly, then gave me clear advice. Sophia, he said, legally, you have every right to ask them to vacate the property. But emotionally, this is going to get messy. Your mother might try to contest the will, even though she doesn't have strong grounds. You need to be prepared for that. I took a deep breath. What should I do in the meantime? Send them a formal notice through me, he said. Make everything official. That way, if they refuse to leave after 30 days, we can start the eviction process properly. I agreed. Mr. Brooks sent a formal letter to my mother and Tyler the very next day. It clearly stated that the property belonged to me and that they had 30 days to vacate. For the first few days after that, things were quiet. Then the messages started. My mother began texting me multiple times a day. Some were guilt-filled, others were angry. Mom, after everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me? Mom, your grandmother would be ashamed of you. Mom, Tyler is struggling with his mental health. You're making everything worse. I didn't reply to any of them. On the 8th day, Tyler called me from a new number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Sophia, he said, his voice low and threatening. You think you're so smart showing up with that will, but you're making a big mistake. This house is our home. We're not going anywhere. I stayed calm. You don't have a choice, Tyler. The house is mine. He let out a short, bitter laugh. We'll see about that. Your mother is already talking to another lawyer. She's going to fight this. And when she does, everyone is going to see what kind of person you really are. Kicking your own mother out of her house? I felt a flicker of anger, but I didn't let it show in my voice. Do whatever you want, but the will is clear, and I'm not changing my mind. He was quiet for a second. You were always jealous of me, even when we were kids. You couldn't stand that Mom chose me over you. Now you're getting your revenge, but you're going to regret this.
Then he hung up. I sat there for a long time after the call, feeling a strange mix of emotions, anger, sadness, and then strangely, relief. Because for the first time, I wasn't the one being threatened or manipulated. I was the one setting the boundary. Still, a small part of me couldn't stop thinking about what Tyler said. Your mother is already talking to another lawyer. I knew my mother. She was stubborn. If she thought there was even a small chance of winning, she would fight. And if she couldn't win legally, she would try to win emotionally by turning other family members against me. I didn't have much family left, but I knew she would try. That evening, I received a message from my Aunt Carol, my mother's older sister. We weren't very close, but we occasionally spoke on holidays. Aunt Carol, Sophia, your mother called me crying. She said you're trying to take the house from her. Is this true? I stared at the message. This was exactly what I had been afraid of. I took a deep breath and replied honestly. Me. Grandma left the house to me in her will. Mom and Tyler have been living there rent-free for years. I gave them 30 days to move out. That's all. She didn't reply for almost an hour. When she finally did, her message was short. Aunt Carol, this is going to destroy what's left of this family. I didn't respond. Because deep down, I already knew the truth. There was no family left to destroy. My mother had destroyed it the night she chose life's stepbrother over me. And now, I was simply refusing to keep pretending otherwise. The next 2 weeks were the hardest. My mother stopped sending emotional texts and started sending legal threats instead. She hired a lawyer, a man named Mr. Harrington, who sent a formal letter claiming the will was suspicious and that my grandmother was not in the right state of mind when she changed it. He demanded that I allow my mother to stay in the house while they investigated the matter. I forwarded the letter to Mr. Brooks. He read it and gave me a small, tired smile across his desk. They're stalling, he said. They know they don't have a strong case, so they're trying to drag this out and pressure you emotionally. Classic move. I stared at the letter on his desk. What happens now? We respond firmly, he said. We reject their claims and give them a final deadline. If they don't leave after that, we file for eviction. But Sophia, he paused and looked at me carefully. You need to be emotionally prepared. This is going to get uglier before it gets better. I nodded, even though my stomach was twisting. That evening, I received a call from my Aunt Carol. Again, this time, her tone was sharper. Sophia, your mother is devastated. She's barely eating. She keeps saying you're trying to throw her out on the street. Is this really what you want? I closed my eyes. Aunt Carol, did she also tell you that Tyler hit me and she kicked me out when I was 17? There was a long pause. She said there was an argument, Aunt Carol said carefully, but that was years ago. Holding on to that kind of anger isn't healthy. I felt something cold settle in my chest. So you're saying I should just let them stay in my house because it's been a few years? She replied, family is more important than a house. I was quiet for a moment. Then maybe you should ask Mom why she chose to protect Tyler instead of her own daughter that night. Because I'm done being the one who has to keep the peace. I ended the call. After that, the guilt trip started coming from more directions. My mother began calling distant relatives and painting me as the cold, heartless daughter who was kicking her own mother out of her home. Some of them started messaging me too. I stopped answering unknown numbers. One afternoon, I was at work when I received a text from an unknown number. It wasn't my mother this time. You think you're so tough now? Enjoy it while it lasts. Houses can burn down. People can have accidents. I stared at the message. My hands started shaking. I didn't recognize the number, but I knew exactly who it was from. Tyler. I took a screenshot and sent it to Mr. Brooks immediately. He told me to save everything and not to respond. He also advised me to be careful and avoid going to the house alone. That night, I sat in my apartment with the lights off, staring at the screenshot. For the first time since this all started, I felt genuinely scared. Not of losing the house, but of what they might do now that they were desperate. The next morning, I called Mr. Brooks again. I want to move forward with the eviction, I said. I'm done waiting. He was quiet for a second. Are you sure? Once we file, there's no going back. Your mother will likely fight it publicly. I'm sure, I replied. I gave them 30 days. They used that time to threaten me and try to turn the family against me. I'm not giving them more time. Mr. Brooks sighed. All right, I'll start the paperwork today. 3 days later, the eviction papers were filed. My mother found out the same day. She called me from a new number, screaming.
You actually did it?" she yelled. "You filed to evict your own mother after everything I've sacrificed for you?" I stayed calm. "You didn't sacrifice anything for me, Mom. You sacrificed me for Tyler. There's a difference." She was breathing hard on the other end. "You're going to regret this, Sophia. I swear to God, you're going to regret this." Then she hung up. I sat there holding the phone, my heart pounding. For a moment, I almost called her back, almost told her I would stop the eviction if she just apologized, really apologized for what happened that night 7 years ago. But I didn't, because I knew she wouldn't. And even if she did, it wouldn't erase the years I spent surviving on my own while she lived comfortably in a house that was supposed to be mine. 2 days later, I received one final message from Tyler. "This isn't over, not even close." I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded it to Mr. Brooks and asked him to add it to the file. Then I put my phone down, walked into my bedroom, and cried for the first time in months. Not because I was weak, but because I finally understood something I had been avoiding for years. This wasn't just about a house. It was about the little girl who was thrown out of her home with a swollen face and nowhere to go. And that little girl deserved to have someone finally fight for her. Even if that someone was me. The days after I filed for eviction felt like I was living in a fog. I went to work, came home, cooked simple meals, and tried to act like everything was normal, but nothing felt normal. Every time my phone rang, my stomach would tighten. I kept expecting another angry call from my mother or a threatening message from Tyler. Mr. Brooks had warned me that once the eviction process started, things could move slowly. He was right. The court gave my mother and Tyler 60 days to respond before a hearing would be scheduled. That meant they still had time to fight back, and they were using every bit of it. My mother began calling distant relatives again, this time with a new story. She told people that I had stolen the house by manipulating my grandmother's lawyer. She claimed I had forged documents and that I was trying to make her homeless out of spite. Some relatives believed her, others stayed quiet. I stopped checking my messages. One evening, while I was sitting on my couch with the TV on mute, I received a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Sophia Langford?" a man's voice asked. "Yes?" "This is Officer Ramirez from the Charlotte Police Department. We received a report about a possible break-in at your property on Maple Street. Are you the owner of that house?" My heart stopped. "Yes," I said quickly. "That's my house. What happened?" There was a call made about suspicious activity. When officers arrived, they found the back window broken and some items missing from inside. "We need you to come down and check if anything was taken." I felt sick. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. When I reached the house, 2 police cars were parked outside. My mother's car was gone. Tyler's truck was also missing. The back window near the kitchen was shattered, glass scattered across the floor inside. An officer led me through the house. The living room was messy, drawers pulled open, some paper scattered on the floor. But the bigger shock came when I walked into what used to be my old bedroom. My grandmother's old wooden jewelry box was gone, the one she had kept on her dresser for years. It wasn't worth much money, but it had sentimental value. Inside were old photos, her wedding ring, and a few pieces of jewelry she had left for me. It was missing. I felt my throat tighten. "Was anything valuable taken?" the officer asked. I nodded slowly. "My grandmother's jewelry box. It had her wedding ring and some old photos." The officer wrote it down. "Do you have any idea who might have done this?" I hesitated for only a second. "My mother and stepbrother were living here until recently. We're in the middle of an eviction." The officer looked up at me. "I see. We'll need to speak with them as well." After the police left, I stood alone in the empty house. The place felt cold and unfamiliar now. I walked into the kitchen and saw a note taped to the fridge. It was written in my mother's handwriting. "You wanted the house so badly? Enjoy it. We're done here." I tore the note off and crumpled it in my fist. They hadn't just left. They had broken in and stolen from me on their way out. I called Mr. Brooks the next morning and told him everything. He was quiet for a few seconds before speaking. "This changes things, Sophia. Breaking into the property and stealing after receiving an eviction notice is a criminal matter now. We can use this against them in court."
I felt exhausted. "I just want this to be over," I said quietly. "I know," he replied, "but we need to be smart. Let the police do their job. In the meantime, I'll push for an earlier court date." The police eventually questioned my mother and Tyler. They both denied breaking in. They claimed someone else must have done it after they moved out. Without solid proof, the police couldn't charge them. But the report was now on record. 2 weeks later, we finally got a court date. I sat in the small courtroom with Mr. Brooks beside me. My mother and Tyler sat on the other side with their lawyer. My mother looked tired. Tyler looked angry. Neither of them looked at me. The judge reviewed the documents, the will, the eviction notice, and the police report about the break-in. When he mentioned the stolen jewelry box, my mother shifted uncomfortably in her seat. After hearing both sides, the judge made his decision quickly. The property clearly belongs to Miss Langford as per her grandmother's will. The defendants have had more than enough time to vacate. I'm ordering immediate eviction. They have 7 days to remove their belongings from the premises. My mother's face went white. Tyler slammed his hand on the table. "This is bullshit," he shouted. The judge gave him a hard look. "Watch your language in my courtroom, young man. This case is closed." As we walked out of the courthouse, my mother finally looked at me. Her eyes were red. "You've destroyed this family, Sophia. I hope you're happy." I stopped and looked at her. "I didn't destroy anything, Mom. You did that the night you chose Tyler over me. I'm just taking back what was always mine." She didn't say anything else. Tyler walked past me without looking in my direction. That evening, I drove back to the house alone. I stood in the front yard for a long time, staring at the old porch where I used to sit with my grandmother. For 7 years, this house had represented pain, rejection, and loss. Now, it was finally mine. But as I stood there, I didn't feel the satisfaction I thought I would. I just felt tired and strangely empty. Because even though I had won, I had also lost something I could never get back. The family I once had was gone forever. The 7 days after the court ruling felt longer than they should have. I didn't go back to the house during that time. I stayed in Raleigh and tried to focus on work, but my mind kept drifting back to Charlotte. I kept wondering what my mother and Tyler were doing. Were they packing? Were they looking for a new place? Or were they still hoping for some kind of last-minute miracle? On the 5th day, Mr. Brooks called me. "Sophia, I received a message from their lawyer. They're asking for an extension. They claim they need more time to find housing." I was quiet for a moment. "No," I said. "They've had more than enough time. Tell them the deadline stands." He didn't argue. On the 7th day, I drove to Charlotte early in the morning. I didn't want to be there when they were moving out, but I also didn't want to leave the house completely unattended. I parked across the street and waited. Around 11 a.m., I saw Tyler's truck pull up. He got out and started carrying boxes to the truck. My mother came out a few minutes later carrying a suitcase.
She looked older than I remembered. Her shoulders were slumped, and she moved slowly. They didn't see me.
I watched as they made several trips back and forth, loading their things into the truck. Tyler looked angry the entire time. My mother just looked tired. Around 2 p.m., they finally finished. Tyler slammed the truck door shut and got into the driver's seat. My mother stood on the porch for a long moment, looking back at the house. She didn't cry, but she didn't move either. Then she turned, got into the truck, and they drove away. I waited another 20 minutes before I got out of my car. The house was quiet when I walked in. Most of the furniture was gone. The living room looked empty and strange. I walked through every room slowly, touching the walls, remembering small things from when I was younger. When I reached my old bedroom, I stopped. The room was completely empty except for one thing. On the windowsill, someone had left my grandmother's jewelry box. It was open. Inside were a few old photos and her wedding ring. The more expensive pieces were missing, but the things that mattered most to me were still there. I picked up the box and held it against my chest. They had taken some things, but they had left the most important ones behind. Maybe out of guilt. Maybe because they knew those things were never really theirs to begin with. I sat on the floor of the empty room for a long time, holding the box. For 7 years, I had carried the pain of being thrown out of this house. I had carried the memory of my mother choosing my stepbrother over me. I had carried the belief that I had no real home and no real family. And now, sitting in this empty room, I realized something. I didn't need them anymore. The house was mine. The pain was still there, but it no longer controlled me. I had survived without them. I had built a life without them. And now I had taken back the one thing they tried to keep from me. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt done. 2 weeks later, I moved into the house. I didn't rush. I took my time painting the walls, replacing the old curtains, and slowly making the space feel like mine instead of the place I was forced to leave. I didn't invite anyone from my family. I didn't post about it on social media. I just quietly moved in and started living. My mother tried calling me one last time, about a month after they moved out. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail saying she was staying with a cousin and that Tyler had found a job in another city. She didn't apologize. She just said she hoped I was happy. I deleted the voicemail. I haven't spoken to her or Tyler since. Sometimes I still think about them. Not often, but every now and then. I wonder if they ever think about what they did. I wonder if my mother ever regrets choosing Tyler that night. I wonder if Tyler ever feels any shame for what he put me through. But those thoughts don't stay long anymore, because I've learned something important. Some people will never take responsibility for the pain they caused, and waiting for them to do so will only keep you stuck. I don't hate my mother. I don't even hate Tyler anymore. I just finally understand that I don't need them in my life to be okay. If you've ever been forced to choose between your own peace and keeping a toxic family together, drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from. I read every single one. You know, after everything that happened, I've come to realize something. Home isn't always the place you grew up in. Sometimes it's the place you have to fight to get back. I spent years believing I had lost everything the night my mother kicked me out. But the truth was, I had only lost people who were never truly on my side. Now I have a house that's mine, a quiet life that I built myself, and the knowledge that I will never again let anyone make me feel like I don't belong in my own story. And that, more than any house or any money, is what finally set me free.